What's going on, guys? I am Callum Shaw, and this is Food for Thought. Today we're going to be talking all about reading nutrition labels. I think this is an area that people sort of assume is more complex than it actually is. So today what we're going to do is break down how you can sort of understand this concept a little bit better and actually make sense of what it is that you're reading on the sides of boxes. So we're going to go over how to read nutrition labels and how to do some mental math to really understand what it is that's actually inside the food that you're eating. We're going to learn how to spot the difference between like clever marketing and what is actually true, and that's basically how we're going to, look at some of the stuff that's printed on the front of the package versus what is written on the label on the back. And then we're going to talk about just how to make this process a little bit simpler so that you can actually start to make the better decisions for yourself and sort of feel confident when you're doing your grocery shopping that you are making good decisions for you and for your family. So thank you so much for joining me. Before we go any further, I need you to hit that like button below and hopefully you will subscribe to the channel and we can continue to have some fun. So without further ado, let's go. This is a box of crackers. So every packaged good that you find at the grocery store is likely going to have some kind of package, right? And on that package, if you look at one side, you'll likely see a blurb about how great the company is or the history of this cracker. And on the other side, what you'll likely find is something that looks a lot like this. Good. Just getting used to camera placement there. So what I'm going to do is hopefully throw a picture of the label up here. I don't know how to do that yet. So if that is there in the video, I want you to know that I learned something. So the first thing that we are going to look at here when we're going through our label, at the very top is going to say something like nutrition facts. Again, I really hope that... really hope I figure out how to do that. So, nutrition facts. Let's use this label as an example. Serving size is about 8 servings per container, which means that this entire box contains 8 servings. Now, what is a serving, you might ask? Well, that'll be actually listed right at the top of the label, and what it's going to say is serving size, and it'll give you usually a measurement in grams and an approximate measurement in the number of crackers if you're using crackers as an example. So this one says 15 crackers is a serving size. So what we get in a serving size of crackers of 15 crackers is 120 calories. So a calorie is the total amount of energy that is available to be broken down in your body from this product, right? Now, what we are looking at here, if we have 120 calories that's listed on the box, it is important to note that the number that is said on the box can be inaccurate, right? So you could actually digest more than sort of like 20% above the potentially listed amount of calories in any given packaged item. But that said, you may actually also get 20% under it. So this is sort of the best estimate of what is contained in the food. It is not necessarily guaranteed what is actually in here. So once we get past the calories, what we have is usually the fat will be the first thing that's listed, and it's marketing, really. There was a long time where fat was one of the most important talking points in nutrition, and everybody thought, fat is terrible. So most people were very concerned about the fat content in their food, which is why it is often listed first. That is the only reason. So total fat. Basically what they've done here, and this again is not necessary, really they only have to put the number of grams of fat that are in any given food, but what we see here, or what we will see here, hopefully, is the total fat is 2 grams. So there are 2 grams of fat, and then they've broken it down underneath into saturated fat and trans fat, which both say 0 grams, which is a very interesting thing, right? Because there is 2 grams of total fat, but listed here there's only 0 grams. So if we look at saturated and trans fat, and both of them say 0, that means that the fat source in this has to come from one of 2 potential options, or both. It could be a polyunsaturated fat, or it could be a monounsaturated fat. Now both of these are unsaturated fats, which just means that they're not solid at room temperature. So they can both... Thanks for bearing with me there. My brain broke a little. Just couldn't decide what I wanted to say next. Monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats basically are both just liquid at room temperature. That's kind of what you need to know about them. So most of them are derived from sort of fatty foods that are usually pressed into an oil, right? So in this instance, right, we have 0 grams of saturated fat, 0 grams of trans fat. So this guy, basically the fat has to come from somewhere, right? So when we go and look in the ingredients here, what we're going to see is unbleached wheat flour, cracked wheat, expeller pressed canola oil. Okay, so our fat source in this is expeller pressed canola oil. Now that is a monounsaturated fat. So fun fact, I also just learned this, canola oil is actually from the same family as like broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, kale, collard greens, like all that kind of fun stuff. It is from the family of, I don't actually know how to say this, Brassicaceae. Whatever. I should probably have Googled that again. I'll spell it for you. So that is our fat source for this. Now, moving on. So we see cholesterol, it's got 0 milligrams. We see sodium, it has 220 milligrams. Now, is sodium a concern? I know there was a big push that salt is the devil, especially when it comes to heart disease. Now, this is an important probably topic that we're going to have to do another video on, but salt is very important for a lot of chemical processes in the body. It is one of sort of the electrolytes. I'm sure you've heard that term. Now, an electrolyte just means that it helps to conduct electricity and is important in the signaling process, basically. So if you don't have enough salt, you can actually die, right? Like if you've heard of like it's overhydration. I can't remember the word offhand. But basically what happens there is the concentration of electrolytes intramuscularly becomes too low, and basically what happens is your body can't actually send the signals that it needs to, and it starts to interfere with the basic functions and muscle contractions. And fun fact, your heart is a muscle. So if you don't have enough salt, potassium, calcium in your body, you actually will die. So do we need to be scared of salt? Not necessarily. Do we need to be scared of salt in high concentrations if we have heart issues or blood pressure issues? Maybe. You should absolutely talk to your doctor, and definitely don't listen to a random guy on YouTube for medical advice, because I will admittedly say that I don't know exactly how important this is, but I know for the average person, especially if you're active and you're sweating regularly, you do actually lose a lot of salt, and not having enough salt can sort of cause a lot of problems, and especially with things like thyroid function. If you don't have enough salt, that can be very problematic. So you might actually find, like, with slightly increasing the amount of salt that you're eating, especially if you've been trying to avoid it for a long time, that you actually start to sort of burn fat a little bit easier, have a little bit more energy. That kind of thing is not uncommon. So I would definitely not be scared of salt. Obviously, don't be a jackass about it, but exercise some discretion. This isn't that. It doesn't have to be that complicated, right? Is there a perfect formula? Likely, but I mean, if you feel like you're eating way too much salty food, you're probably eating way too much salty food. Like, again, it's not rocket science. Just do your best. Next thing on the label. Total carbohydrates. So we've got 24 grams of total carbohydrates, and then that they break down further into dietary fiber, total sugars, and includes 0 grams of added sugars. So dietary fiber, we've got 1 gram of fiber. Oh, terrific. So now this box doesn't say it, but a lot of the times when companies are trying to sell you things like crackers or crap. I don't have another good example. Let's use cracker or cereal. Let's say crackers or cereal. A lot of the time they will advertise that it's like high in fiber or whatever, right? Now the criteria for high in fiber, I think, is like something over 4 grams or 5 grams. I will again fact check that for you, and you'll see that flashing on the screen. But when they do that, right? You could look at the total carbohydrates here, and there's 24 grams of carbohydrates in the thing, and let's say 5 grams, for example, are fiber, it can say something like high fiber on the front, which sort of gives you the impression that this is like a healthy thing that I'm eating. But really, when you look at the back of the box, right, if we go through the ingredients and you're eating a bunch of wheat, and you've got 5 grams of fiber, and then you've got 5 grams of sugar, and then the remaining 15 grams are starch, right? Like it's not that it's unhealthy, right? It's just that we need to understand, like, okay, am I being sold something here, or is this something that's actually good for me and is doing what I want it to do, right? So when we look at the carbohydrate breakdown, what we're going to see, right, we've got our 24 grams in total, we've got our 1 gram of fiber, and our 0 grams of sugar. So that means there's 23 unaccounted for grams that are on this label that aren't being talked about, right? Now, there are 3 types of carbohydrates. We have fiber, we have sugar, and we have starch, right? So basically what's happening here, they're telling us that we have 1 gram of fiber, they're telling us we don't have any sugar, but then they've neglected to tell us that there's 23 grams of starch in this, right? So again, it is up to their discretion to put whatever they want to put on these nutrition labels, as long as they meet the basic criteria, which is you have to have the amount of fat, you have to have the amount of carbohydrates, you have to have the amount of protein and sodium, and I assume they have cholesterol on here, so I mean, that might be necessary. I'm not positive. But, do we need 23 grams of starch from crackers? And then the answer, of course, is it depends, right? So what are you trying to do? And then, is it the best thing that you could eat to accomplish that goal, right? Because if the goal is to eat 50 grams of carbohydrates a day, like let's say you're doing the ketogenic diet, right, is having 15 crackers for half of your daily allowance of carbohydrates the best way that you could do it? Arguably not, right? So this is just none of this information is particularly important independently. This is all important in the context of whatever it is that you're trying to do, okay? So the next thing on the label here, we've got 3 grams of protein. So again, let's I'll give myself a shout out back to the last video that I did on protein, which I will hopefully figure out how to link somewhere here, that if you want to watch it. But again, it has 3 grams of protein and it's written on the box. So if you were thinking like, oh, I need to get more protein, well, great, that's fine. I had some crackers today. It's like, fantastic, you had some crackers. You had 15 crackers and you got 3 grams of protein. That's great. But if you need 150 grams of protein in your day, right, unfortunately, you have to eat, 50 times 15 crackers. You have to eat 750 crackers, right, to get your 150 grams of protein. Now, I mean, does that sound delicious? Yeah, but I mean, eventually you're probably going to get tired of chewing, so this may not be the most efficient way to get your 150 grams of protein. And then below that, they're going to go into some of the sort of micronutrients that are available, right? So we've got vitamin D, they've listed at 0. Again, I don't know why you would bother. They've got calcium, you've got 7 milligrams of calcium, which equates to approximately 0% of what you need in a day. You've got 0.5 milligrams of iron here, which is 2%, and then you've got 41 milligrams of potassium, which again accounts for approximately 0% of what you need in a day. So a lot of people, or a lot of companies, will write this stuff down because having these things, right, like these are things that people perceive, right, as very important. Now, granted, vitamin D is great, right? Vitamin D is something that's very important, and especially if you live in cold climates and you're in darkness for most of the year, it's very important that you're supplementing with vitamin D. So people will put this on the label, and even if it says 0, a lot of people just see vitamin D and don't recognize or don't put the pieces together that this actually has none in it, right? But they're just like, oh, it says vitamin D, right? So there's an element of marketing involved in what goes into these nutrition labels that is, it's not by accident, right? Like these companies put it here to make it intentionally slightly more confusing. So just make sure you're taking the time to kind of read what is on these labels, and make sure that are putting the pieces together, and that you know what it is that you're trying to do, right? Again, like, there's nothing wrong with having crackers. It's totally fine. But if you're having crackers because you think that they're a good low carbohydrate snack compared to bread, it's important to know that it's pretty much the same thing, right? And that does not in any way mean that it's bad. It literally just means that it's the same thing, and that you need to know that. Yeah, cool. All right, guys. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is the concept of the health halo, and this is something that has been, I'm going to say, thrown around in a lot of like food documentaries and stuff. But the real basic point of this is, people spend a lot of money figuring out what to put on the front of a package to make it seem like what you're buying is healthier than it actually is. So it'll say things like low in fat, high in fiber, high protein, things of that nature. When or they'll like really focus in on specific pieces, right? So it'll say like 6 grams of protein per serving or something like that, or 5 grams of fiber per serving, and they really pick and choose, or contains calcium, like this kind of stuff on yogurt, for example, right? So it's really important when we are reading packaging, that we're understanding the difference between what is on the front of the box or on the front of the package and what's on the back. So this just means if something says it's high in fiber, right? Terrific, great, fiber's awesome. Read the back. Because a lot of the time, they might say it's high in fiber, and that's terrific. It's 5 grams of fiber per serving or whatever. Flip it over, and when we read it again, we're looking at our total carbohydrates, right? Yes, it has 5 grams of fiber, but it has 50 grams of total carbohydrates or something like that, which means 45 grams of those carbohydrates are coming from sugar or starch, right? And they might break down what that sort of portion is, right? But you think you're doing something great because you're getting 5 grams of fiber, right? And we all know fiber is good for us because that's been drilled into our heads. But it's not necessarily the case, right? And we just want to make sure, if what we're aiming for is more fiber, right, that we're not getting a whole bunch of extra stuff that we don't want accompanying that, right? So we just want to make sure that whatever we're trying to get out of our food, whether it's more protein, more fiber, more calcium, that we're doing it in a way that doesn't also bring a bunch of stuff that we don't want with it, okay? Thank you for bearing with my very blurry camera there. I have no idea how any of this stuff works. So, okay, so I hope that makes some sense. And this again will sort of give a shout out back to that protein video. The exact same concept applies. Again, if our goal is to get more protein, there are more and less effective ways to do that, right? So let's I've already done the protein one, so let's talk more about the fiber. Like if our goal is to get 25 grams of fiber in a day or something, and we see that we can get 5 grams of fiber from some crackers, right? But it comes with 50 grams of other carbohydrates and sugar and starch that we don't necessarily want, and it's got some weird seed oils we can't pronounce in it, and like a bunch of other stuff that you don't really know what it is, but it's got 5 grams of fiber. That may not be the best way to get what it is that you want. When both fruits and vegetables have way more vitamins, minerals, good like natural healthy, like it's got I don't necessarily want to use the term healthy sugar, but it's at least like sugar that your body knows what to do with, right? So there's a lot of different ways to accomplish a goal, and especially in the context of something like weight loss or fat loss, we want to make sure that we're choosing stuff that our body really knows how to handle well. So that would mean like less processed, fruits and vegetables that have tons of fiber, tons of vitamins and minerals in it, a lot of water, which is also a great thing, just to make sure that you're staying well hydrated and all that good stuff. So just make sure that you know that there's more than one way to accomplish a goal, and that what's written on the front of the package is not necessarily designed to give you solid nutrition advice. It's designed to sell you what's in the box, right? So let's wrap this up. How do we make good decisions? So basically, the idea: try not to read too much about what's on the front of the box. If you're going to buy stuff that's packaged or processed, we want to make sure that we're looking at the nutrition labels and really understanding what it is that we're eating. There's nothing wrong with packaged foods, but ideally we want to get as much of our diet from stuff that didn't come in a box as possible. So basically, if you had to follow the rules of nutrition, one would be eat as many fruits and vegetables as possible, eat as few sort of grains as possible. Try and get your protein sources from whatever. I mean, this is always an interesting one. There's usually some vegans and vegetarians involved. So try and get your protein from the most efficient source possible. So that means get your protein with as little extra luggage as you can. So that would mean, make sure that if you're eating animal products, like, know the difference between like a sausage, which is sort of like an equal amount of protein and fat that you're getting, and like chicken breast, which is like 5 or 6 times as much protein as fat. And if you're going the vegetarian route, right, just know that every gram of protein that you're eating, even in like the highest concentrations of protein in vegan food, like, you're still going to get probably a gram of carbohydrates with it, right? So you need to factor that in when you're making the decisions for the rest of your diet. So yeah, that's kind of the basics, right? With every meal, especially, is like if you're trying to lose fat, basically, as much protein as possible, as many vegetables as possible. Try and get most of your carbohydrates from fruit. If you're trying to, gain muscle and whatever, follow essentially exactly what I just said, but add some carbohydrates, and try and make them in the form of stuff that you digest well, right? So if you find that you feel really bloated and screwed up, again, we'll do another video on this, but if your stomach hurts after you eat something, or if you have like really bad gas, or you're burping a lot, or you just feel really bloated, like there's a pretty good chance that you're not digesting whatever it is that you're eating very well. So we want to put you in the position to digest what you're eating very well, and that means like picking carbohydrates that agree with you, right? So some people tolerate wheat and bread and stuff totally fine. For others, I know, like for myself, I feel way better when I eat mostly like potatoes and rice as my carbohydrate source. So just food for thought. Let's try and keep it as simple as possible. It should. If you've seen the new Canada's Food Guide, I actually really like it. I think they did a good job. So that is an excellent reference. I'll maybe throw a little visual up here at the end and talk over it while I beg for likes and subscribes and shares and all that good shit. Guys, if you have any questions, please ask them in the comments, or feel free to email me. I'll put the link to email me in the description of this video. If you have any ideas for future episodes that you'd like to see, or you want me to talk about anything really, just let me know. I'm trying to find as many opportunities to make these as possible, so I can get more comfortable in front of the camera, and hopefully we'll start making less mistakes as we go. So again, thank you so much for joining me. Please like and subscribe to the channel, and if you could share it with a friend, that would be amazing. Have an excellent rest of your day. Bye for now.